So, Robbo, great to have you back. Part two of what was our most successful ever podcast. I think Jake, who runs our socials that said we've got over 1 million total views from the last pod, the short versions and the longer form. So, obviously, what you said was absolutely brilliant and it resonated a lot with grassroots coaches. So, it's so good to have you back.
Thanks,
I
Jimmy.
guess my first question is, how did you feel in terms of the response? And
I wasn't clear what to expect, but clearly, I spoke to Jake, but no, I've had a real response from it. A lot of people contacted me I haven't spoke to for years, and really, really positive. Had a couple of challenges as well, which was good. A friend of mine who's a coach just sort of said to me, because a lot of it was about behaviours and that. And he actually said to me, like, if Roy Keane was watching that, Robbo, what do you think he'd say? Which was quite funny because he knows I've always looked at him as someone in terms of behaviour, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I said he'd probably look at it and go, like, what a load of nonsense. Why do you need a coach to inspire you to behave this way? I said, but that is fundamentally what it's about. Your Roy Keanes, your Frank Lampards, John Terry, Steven Gerrards, they're not the norm. And anyone who coaches will know that, that there are certain people who have this intrinsic behaviour, it seems, from a young age, whether it come from parenting or what's happened, that gets them to behave in a certain way, and they possibly don't need the coach to turn up every day and train and be at their best every single day. But that isn't the norm. And I said, so he probably would look at it and go, why do you need these processes in place? But I think, that most players do. To get that intrinsic behaviour. I think he actually quoted once, Jimmy, I think it was Roy Keane, said it was good teams, coaches make players accountable. Great teams, players make players accountable. And that's kind of what this is about, really, where you're developing an inspiring behaviour that players make each other more accountable. Because if you kind of you go through, even listen to people like Ancelotti, it tends to be a lot about the players and the players driving things themselves, leaving the coach to coach the detail.
That's really interesting, Rob. And I assume it's applicable to grassroots as well, right? I mean, the things that you just said there are true in the pro game at the academy level or as you get towards the top end. But also in the grassroots game. I'm just thinking about my side as well, where you've got mixed focus, mixed concentration players that probably do need to lean on a coach much more than the players that are with you, ready to work hard and want to get better themselves.
Definitely, because everyone intrinsic motivation is different. Everyone's different on that pathway sometimes, and I think when you talk about stuff like this, people get confused between the connections you make off the pitch with people and then the terms of what you're expecting on the pitch, on the training pitch, and they kind of, the two go together. You got to build those connections off the pitch, deeper connections to understand your players. And then you have the processes in place in training that hopefully, you see them start taking a little bit more control in terms of driving things and what you're looking for, So it's not one or the other. You've got to build the connections first to understand why some players' motivation might look less than others. And then you have those processes in place to hopefully see them start to become empowered more,
So one of, going back to the part one we did a couple of weeks ago, Robert, one of the most frequent questions we got asked by our audience was around the brick wall idea.
Okay, right.
And I'd like to spend a bit of time on this because there was a lot of interest on that. Could you just explain what it is, how it's of benefit to, particularly to grassroots coaches as well?
Okay. Yeah, it's trying to bring it to life is difficult because when you say a brick wall, it's, I had a few messages about it. I think where it started from, I said to you last time about football being quite habitual, and what I did find through the development phases, you did seem to go on this roller coaster ride where 1 week it was great, and the intensity was great and the pressing was great and they played quickly. And then for some reason it dropped off again. And, and this is where all these thoughts come out, and then the coach will drive it, and then you're happy again 1 week and then it drops again. You kind of got this roller coaster. So I started looking and I'm going, and then I found like analysis processes could be quite boring for players in terms of when it comes to analysis. There's a lot of again, the coach talking and the players nod, and we think nod means they understand.
Yeah.
But it's not been a collaborative process, if that makes sense. So then they walk out and we go, oh, we think they've understood. And then the performance doesn't relate to what you've delivered in your analysis, all these things. So, and then you've got the cultural stuff as well, the standards around the place, your general cultures, which you'd have at any level of football, whether it's grassroots. So I just sat there and thought, how can I, and technology isn't my thing, by the way, what can I do to encompass everything, including a purpose, including a why? And I just come up with this analogy of a brick wall. So I'll try and explain it. If it's not clear, you come back to me.
Sure.
So the foundation of the brick wall is the culture. So to give an example, at Chelsea, it was proud to be Chelsea. So that's the cement. So if we called that the cement, that sits at the bottom of the brick wall, okay? And that was proud to be Chelsea. Then the next bricks on top of that were your foundation bricks. Now they would be training processes, okay? So they're sitting on top of the cement. The cement holds everything together. Then you've got all your training processes. Then all the bricks after that would be, I guess you could call them tactical behaviours, or elite behaviours. So quickest recovery runs, like we talked about, no overtaking. Another thing we might have is unselfish runs. So we had a rule called 7-1. So every 7 runs you make, you might only get the ball once, but you have to keep making those runs.
Right.
First and second balls. And then there would be bricks like individual brilliance. So they're all bricks basically around football. You could call it your game model, whatever you want to call it, but they are your football bricks. And then sitting at the top is like your roof, which encompasses everything at the top, and that would be your purpose. So at Chelsea, our purpose, our why, was to become more intrinsically motivated and process driven. We chose that at Chelsea because, again, I felt there was an awful lot of extrinsic motivation. There's obviously a lot of financial reward around, and I just felt the players need to have a more intrinsically motivated. Yeah. So that's what the wall looks like.
Right.
Is that all clear?
Yeah, that's all clear.
That makes sense. Yeah. So then when it comes to analysis sessions, everything's best practice. So we're sharing through best practice, and it's interactive. So giving you an example, so if we go on the cultural brick, after the games, I wanted the players to sort of talk to the fans after the game, win, lose or draws, spend a little bit of time with the fans. You're getting your potentially young Chelsea players or whatever, give a bit of time back to the fans. And we got some great feedback from fans on that. So when we did analysis, we'd share that, and it might be an individual doing something. We also the Chelsea fans did a sleep out for the homeless. So the squad come with me to that, and we shared pictures of that and the feedback we got from the Chelsea fans. So anything like that, plus individual things. We had a player made his debut away to Man City, and on the way back, he asked if he could go a different way so that he could come and watch the 21s play. Yeah. And the manager was like, of course you can, great. We shared that. But all this positive reinforcement obviously builds your culture, because we're human. People sit there and go, okay, I'd quite like to be the next one because I've done something positive for someone. So we'd share all those things. I didn't allow headphones when they were getting off the coach, because if there was fans there, and this was at first team level as well, I'm like, it's just my view. If you got fans travel to come and watch you, spend a few minutes saying hello. Yeah. Don't get off with your headphones, which for me is just a block. Yeah. And people go, oh, they're in the zone. Really? What, hour and 35 minutes in the zone? So spend a little bit of time, actually eye-to-eye contact with the supporters as you get off the coach, thanks for coming, that sort of thing. So we shared, so that was the cultural. And that would be the same with the training bricks when we had a game. So we'd be sitting in an analysis room, and it could manifest its way in several ways. Sometimes, I forgot. I use the Chelsea analogy because it's best. So that wall was red initially, because we're Chelsea, don't like red. Everything's red. So first and foremost, they had to turn every brick blue through best practice. Okay, so when we sit in an analysis room, I'd say to the analysis guy, it has to be best practice. So if we're showing a great counter attack, you can't put it on as best practice unless we got great shape behind the ball. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the brick would come up. It's interactive. Player would put up their hand. tell us what brick they thought it was and explain why.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's how it worked. Brick would turn blue. The game would go on there, which game it was, and a number would go how many clips we've got of that brick. So first and foremost, we're trying to turn all the red bricks to blue. Okay.
And you're trying to do that every session,
so
or
no,
over the course of a season?
So it'd be after every game. So that would be how we'd analyse a game.
Yeah.
So we had other things in analysing the game, like we were big on regains, first and second ball. There were things that we knew if we outdid the opposition on certain stats, more often than not, we won the game.
Right.
Okay. But the brick wall basically was to reinforce our best practices.
Right.
Okay, and go, this is us doing it at our best. This is elite behaviour. All we were asking you to do is to continue to reenact this. Obviously, the game can look different depending what you're up against, but that was fundamentally it. But that would, you play against a team high press, mid block. You're still showing how you've overcome these different problems through best practice.
Sure.
So that's what it would look like. I'm trying to give you an example of training. So and we would link training as well. So if we've won a game, say 3-0. We could also link it and go, look, this is what you worked on in training, and this is how it's linked to the game. So we played Liverpool away. We drew earlier in the season, and they were like really high aggressive press. I mean, we got goal kicks. They're setting up on the edge of the penalty area. And we nearly lost that game because we kept trying to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to have a way of, like we called it a default ball to get out of that. So we worked on something in training to get out of that. Players done it brilliantly in the game. So that link then, so that brick, we called it train as you play.
Yeah.
We'd show the clip, then we'd show the clip of the game. But the lads would be talking why. I think we won that game 3-1. But then what I'm saying is, where the power is, then you're going, well, look, we've told you this, we've helped you with a solution for that. We've given you the detail. We've worked on it in training. Your next challenge now, next time you come up against this aggressive press like that, now it's for you to manage it.
Yeah.
Because if you go on to have a career, you're playing in front of 40,000 people, and you're, I said in the last podcast, Liverpool at Anfield against even Barcelona couldn't get out, right?
Yeah.
So rather than waiting for half time, we're going, lads, come on, you should be able to solve that and go, right, let's not do this. This is too dangerous. Default ball, bang, we get out. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
So and that's how it works. So, and then, as I said, there would be the last time on each brick, it would show the game and the date. So we'd know the last best practice clip we'd had. And what would happen after a certain amount of time, if we didn't have a clip, the brick would turn back to red again.
Oh, right, okay.
Do you know what I mean? So we go, well, look, it's a long, and also that would link to performance, because you might have if we're on a sticky run, you could go, well, we're not doing that as well as we did. And again, it'd be the same with the intrinsically motivated stuff. We would share best practice clips. So if a player, I'd make sure that my analysis guy was filming anyone working on extras. I say, make sure you're doing that. And if that related to a game, bang, that would go up. And the room would clap him, and we, so it was energy. And it could vary. So sometimes it was individuals, and we run it like a bit of a competition to guess the bricks. Then sometimes we'd break them into units, and then sometimes we'd break them into units and show them the clips. They would sit and do it, then they would deliver it back to us. So we'd come in the room, and they would, because we wouldn't probably do more than 5-6 clips,
right.
Yeah, because it had to be best practice.
Yeah,
and they would deliver back to us. Right, this is what the brick was. This is why we think it is. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then if I would add any extra detail, my coaches would if we needed. But what you got was, 1, you're learning by best practice. 2, you're building a game model. So it's more about you than the opposition. So when you do come to games, you can just pick out 1 or 2 things on the opposition you think could stop you not winning the game. And 3, it gave you a common language. So the best example I'll give you that, we had a brick called Send Them Back. So that brick was when the opposition got in got into the attacking third. We had a way of defending that we wanted to, excuse me, Jimmy, we wanted to send them back beyond the halfway line.
Yeah.
So if they're in a crossing position, It's like, well, we would do sessions on this. How did we defend that they've got the ball, but we're in control,
Sure.
and we can force them back beyond the halfway line.
Yeah.
And that was called send them back brick.
Yeah.
Now, you could hear players when teams got into those areas. You'd hear the players start going, send them back, send them back.
Yeah.
And they knew what that meant. To every player, they knew what that looked like. So even if we were a bit out of shape in terms of structure, so it might have meant, normally you say have your fullback and your winger defending, maybe because of the way the game broke down, we haven't got that. They would still know what that looked like in terms of trying to force them back. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I was going to say, Robert, that I think the connection to the grassroots game, you can apply those three things. Absolutely. What's best as a coach of a grassroots team?
Totally.
What's the best practice that I'm looking for training game day?
Yeah.
What's the common language that I'm looking for that players will understand and help the team?
Yeah.
What was the second one that you said, Robert? That was on. So you said best practice. You said common language, and there was another one that I thought, there's a commonality. There's a way for a grassroots coach that doesn't have the resources and the time,
and it might look simpler because of you. And when I was at Wimbledon Grassroots, when I look back, I did similar things. I didn't have obviously the resources to do, but I would have similar things where they had a common language. And they knew what we looked like at our very best. Yeah. And that was the analogy behind the brick wall, really. The analogy behind the whole that whole wall, cultural training, football actions, purpose, was if we're this, if we are this every single day, every single week, one, you've got a great chance of having a career, and two, we're going to win lots and lots of football matches. Yeah. Soon as any of these bricks are missing, you're leaving yourself open individually and collectively to possibly not achieving what we want to achieve. Yeah. And that was it, So, we would have other things. We'd have clips we call good to great, so sometimes we'd start with that and we'd show them clips that were good, but they didn't make the brick wall. And we'd go to them, these are the clips that haven't, and we'd ask them why they didn't make the brick wall. Right. Just to see again their understanding. So they would go, so it might be we got into great football, got into a crossing area, got the crossing, but we had a thing called crossing agreements. And it might have been that the lad was standing out here and he hasn't arrived at the far post. So
what's a crossing agreement?
So a crossing agreement, we'd have certain areas that we wanted players to be getting to give us the best opportunity to score. So one across the front post, one arriving there, one far. Right. And you had to work hard to keep getting into those areas at all times. Yeah. Right. So, if the lad hasn't arrived at the far post, and it takes time, but because of the culture we had, and it wasn't a blame culture, we'd show it and you would get, like, he'd put his hand out and go, sorry, Robbo, I wasn't arriving at the far post. And we'd go, right. Do you know what I mean? And then but you could be clever with it as well, because then when it comes to best practice, you might know you've got a clip where he's arriving and he's tapping one in. Yeah. So it's just going, look, relentless behaviour, because for you, as that wide player, arriving at the far post continuously could take you from being a 7-goal a season man to like a 15-goal a season man. And there's a hell of a lot of difference in your career if you're scoring 15 goals a season as a wide player than 7. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that was, that's how it was.
Coaches, do you want to improve your sessions and your players? Go now to playgreatsoccer.com to get a whopping 75% off your Ultimate Bundle. The Ultimate Bundle has some great resources that will help improve your sessions and your players. Go now to playgreatsoccer.com to get 75% off. Well, you talked a lot about player ownership and how that sort of interacts with the wall. We had a lot of questions, Robert, about player ownership, and just could you talk about? Is there anything else that you haven't mentioned about that player ownership sort of model or program that you had in place that you think is important for our audience to understand or have an implication on grassroots as well?
I've thought about this because I talk mainly about the warm ups, and it's quite hard to get it across because it was such a living thing, and a lot of it come from the coaching and the way you talk to players. So it's hard, Jimmy. I can't go, oh, we did that. It was just continuous. Yeah, it was just continuous on and off the pitch. It was. Trying to think. Let me try and think. So when we went on tour, even so, when we got to a stage where we could go on tour, I used to get the parents to sign waiver forms because I would say, look, we're going here, and I want to give them free time. I think it's really important.
Yeah.
So you can either not sign it, and I won't. I'll come up with another way. But I think it's really important that we let them have some free time. And I wasn't being irresponsible.
Yeah.
But I just think it's important, you know, because we live in fear now.
Yeah.
And, you know, everyone thinks, oh, we don't, you know, I don't think we're any unsafer than we ever was. I just think social media has made us feel that things are a lot worse than they actually are, you know, so
that's an example of giving them responsibility.
Give them responsibility.
Basically.
So I remember we won there was a thing called Erasmus where you got awarded. It was brilliant. You could go away for 2 weeks. It was incredible. So within that, there was a downtime day and you could go to a water park. Now there was one club who, because there was, you know, I don't want to mention the name, but they were very strict with the players and they could go off in twos and then come back and whatever. And I'm like, okay, so it's 10 o'clock. We're back here at 3. Because when I talk about this, I don't want you to think I'm fluffy.
Yeah.
The last thing I am is fluffy, right? You got to be back at 3. You know what the ramifications would be if I hear of anything untoward or misbehaviour, and they knew anyway. Have a fantastic time. See you at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And the parents would have known that. So, you know, so I expect them to go off and have a great time.
Yeah.
Mingle with the locals, have a brilliant time, and then we come back together and have, you know, rather. And I think if you allow people to step up and you've got standards, and I won't keep talking. I won't talk about values because I think values can vary with people. But I think if you have standards of behaviour, and so it was constant like that around ownership. So I'm guessing I'm trying to relate this all to your grassroots, but you know there must be things you do as grassroots clubs where you might go somewhere.
Yeah.
So just think about, well, actually, can we give them a little bit more responsibility around that?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Robert. I think there's instances of that, like you mentioned warm up in the last one. I'm thinking in training, there's instances of that when you arrive, you know, at the game, or there's instances that you can say, right, you know, you've got to sort out your own kit.
See, now things are flooding back because it's been a long time ago. So that would be, so lads arrived, we would get them to set up their own little warm up and start straight away.
Yeah.
So rather than wait for the coach to come and do, if you're there 15 minutes early, you can get on the pitch, set something up, do it yourself, like all those things, and it was just constant.
Yeah.
So it was constant, and that led obviously to the player-led games that would happen with the younger age groups. So we'd have a weekend where it was player-led.
Yeah.
And it all led, but it was just constant things like that.
Brilliant.
You know? Is that
that's brilliant.
So it's not one thing. It's just rather than, because our go-to, and we're the same as parents, is our go-to is, oh, come on, let's just tell them, or we're on a clock. Just have a little think about, do I need to? Can I give them some responsibility there?
Yeah.
You know, and I've been trying to think how I could give you an analogy on how I see coaching and developing people. And the best way I can explain it is, it doesn't matter for me whether it's grassroots or whether it's professional. Everyone wants to get better generally, and we can talk about that maybe when we go to talking about mixed a bit. But I think everyone does want to improve. You know, if you're dragging someone to go and play a sport, you need to be thinking, should I be dragging them there?
Yeah.
If they want to go there, they want to get better. So the way I look at coaching is, and I've explained this to lads, you know, you're standing at the bottom of a mountain and you want to climb that mountain. And I see our job as coaches is to help them climb that mountain.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So have you ever done rock climbing?
No, I haven't.
Right.
No.
So, you know, so if you rock climb, you've got your let's say your coach supporting you, who's got the rope. Now, if you're climbing that mountain and that rope's constantly pulled tight, you're kind of, you are climbing, but you can feel the support there all the time. So for me, if it's constantly like that, you're not really climbing it and you're in your comfort zone too much. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if that rope ever come off, you're panicking.
You're in trouble.
Because you can feel it. All through that journey, you can feel it.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is that rope should be slack to a certain degrees.
Yeah.
So if you're looking, I'd say there should be like maybe 2 foot of slackness there, where you're actually going, oh, I'm climbing this. But at the same time, if you fall, you're not falling too far. You're right. It's only a couple of feet and you're there to help.
Sure.
And I think the slackness of that rope can depend. So when I did the player-led games with the under-18, a good friend of mine said to me, I think you should go though. Like, I understand the player-led, but you not going, I think that's a stretch too far. So I was kind of releasing that rope a lot. I was probably giving them a 10 to 12 foot fall, right? But I was confident enough with the boys and our processes to think, no, I'm confident that even if this doesn't go how I'm envisioning it, the fallout isn't going to be that bad.
Yeah.
That they're not going to crumble. We'll be able to come back and talk. So I went with that decision. But in terms of the slackness of that rope, I've taken that off quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you look at it. You basically want them to climb that mountain, and you want them to give them the right amount of support throughout that journey. And it might be at some point you do have to pull it tighter because they need that and they need some support. Do you know what I mean? But I think if they don't feel like they're climbing it themselves, I don't think you're going to get all these things we talk about. And I go back to your Roy Keanes and your Gerrards. Their pathway to wherever, for me, there must have been there would have been things that have brought about that sort of inspiration and that intrinsic motivation that makes them what they are.
Yeah.
It hasn't.
It's something different.
It's something different.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're trying to do, as well as the tactical stuff, which is important. We're talking about behavioural things here, and I think that's key.
The rock climbing analogy is brilliant, Robbo, and it makes sense. I think it's applicable, obviously, to not just football, but pro development or grassroots development. You can think about, as a parent, how that applies in different things.
Yeah.
It also goes into one of the questions that we're also asked most about sort of our last podcast, which is about confidence and how you can help players that maybe have a low confidence kind of recover that and improve in that area. And you talked about that support that you can give them. So that's one area where you can enable or help improve and support their confidence. Can you talk about a couple of other areas where maybe that can help support confidence growth in young players?
Well, I think so. If we keep running with that analogy and you're seeing someone, so there's a time when the rope needs to be pulled tighter, right? So they need that. They're having a dip in confidence. Hopefully you've built those connections with them as well. Yeah. And I think we've got to be careful here when we're talking connections with players. I'm not talking about a fist pump when they turn up. That's not a connection. We're talking about knowing more about them on a bit of a deeper level, and that comes from small little conversations that you have.
Yeah, sure.
Or obviously if they're younger, through having a relationship with their parents, so you kind of understand them better. So if they're having a lack of confidence around whatever area. So maybe we're looking, maybe it's a winger and he's physically not able to dominate his opponent. So he's lost a bit. He's not taking people on as much because maybe he's been physically dominated.
This is one of the questions, Robert.
Right. Okay. So
what do you do in that scenario?
So then first and foremost, you've got to talk to him and make him understand that this is just part of his journey. Yeah. Don't worry about this. It's all going to even itself out. Don't take away the fear of failure. I've had that similar situation where we've almost laughed about it. So like I've got to the stage where in training I've just gone, you keep doing it, you keep getting him, and he's got knocked over and sat on his backside, and we've had a laugh about it. Like take the fear, take it away. Up you get, come and go again. But then obviously you can incorporate it into training 1v1s, like spend a bit of time, maybe put him up against someone who is physically in that side going to possibly dominate him. But then you can look at maybe the detail of how he can avoid those physical challenges, how he might mix his game up a little bit more. Sometimes is it time to play and spin off around the back of him and have success that way? Yeah. So it's not always beating your player 1-to-1. It might be that you draw him in, you've got support, you play off and you spin and you get round him that way.
Yeah.
But the key thing is to make him realise it's all right. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. It's fine. This is just, and I did have that with a lad at Wimbledon, who technically very good. He got released at a young age, so we took him in, and struggled physically so much so that his parents asked me, "Oh, I think you should move his position because he's not having success in midfield." So one I had to deal with them and say, "No, that's ridiculous. He's going to be fine." But I had to speak to the player and make him understand this is just part of it. Don't worry. So we talked about how he can find space more. What does that look like? Because that should, in the position he played, which was like a 10, more of an attacking midfielder, that's key anyway. Because if you're finding space better, you're not getting involved in so many physical duels. So we talked about that. But then just making him realise that now and again, if he did get physically put, it doesn't matter. And make sure that he was doing enough away from the game as well to do things. So, and yeah, he's playing in the Championship now. Good. And he's doing very well for himself. So, but he did go through some real uncertainty. Yeah. And I think if we go back to ownership as well, I think, you know, is there other sports you could be doing that could help with that as well? Because it's not always about size, Jimmy. I mean, I had another lad at Wimbledon who's, again, doing very well for himself. He's 5'7", was never big, but he'd done mixed martial arts from an early age. So he actually loved physical contact. Yeah. And he could hold off like 6'2". So, you know, I would look at that. And at Grassroots, well, maybe look at judo or something like that, where you learn to use your body, because you don't have to be, it's all about controlling your own body and knowing how you can use your own body as well. Yeah. And that will give you content. Even if you go and do something where you're having physical contact, that will give you more confidence. Sure. Because you're not so much, you know, you're not worried about the physical contact when it comes. Yeah. But again, that will be part of your culture and trying to get players and parents to understand it doesn't all have to be football. I mean, if I was restructuring an academy now, it would probably look very different to then. If you know, I would probably have more players doing more multi-sports or finding time to do other stuff as well as football.
As well as football.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
One of the questions that leads into it, Robbo, we were asked was about how you instill aggression in players. I don't know if it's aggression. I think it's probably more competitiveness. And this might be more appropriate in the grassroots game, where you've got players that might be reluctant to be there initially. Yeah. And I guess through effective coaching, you can get them on side. You can, that competitiveness might be a result of the work that you do over the course of a season, for example. But have you got any advice for people that perhaps that edge is missing, and they don't care enough in a way? Yeah. Again, this is probably not relevant for the pro game, but is there anything that any tips you could give around that, Robert? How you can really give them that drive?
If it appears the players don't care enough, I think you've got to check they do care enough, and it's not. This isn't being driven by the parents. You know, maybe you don't want to play football first and foremost. Yeah. No, but you know, I think you have to look at that you're not living your life through your kids. Yeah. That they actually do want to be there. Yeah. And I think you do see that sometimes. I certainly experience that. And you think, well, do they really love this enough, or do they want to play in a different sort of environment where it is less competitive? Do you know what I mean? So I think that's key. But in terms of the competitive edge, I think if you feel they're not aggressive enough, you can build that up in terms of maybe building up the physical contact. You know, again, we're not talking about great resources, but I have had players where, you know, we've got rugby pads out with them. Yeah. To get used to physical contact. Yeah. And again, it's not a great lot of money. That would be within a grassroots structure. Yeah. And you can make it enjoyable as well. So you can do sort of evasive games where they get in contact with rugby pads, you know, and this thing, Jimmy, a lot of that stuff that we probably grew up with has died, like British Bulldog got banned, didn't it? You know, or Bulldog, probably can't call it British, but you know, that got banned because, it's too aggressive, but they were things that we did that kind of got you used to that. But you can do those sort of things where there can be some contact where you build up confidence. Sure. I mean, I'm looking back, I have to go right back. Yeah, I mean, I did like block tackling is something that's died, and I remember just at starter sessions sometimes we'd do the warm up, and they'd just have a ball between two, and they would stand a yard apart, and they would just come together and block tackle, left and right foot, block tackle, and we'd do it just for 4 or 5 minutes, you know. But we made it a bit of a competition, like who's. Like, so to win, your ball had to go in that direction, you know? Yeah. So you can do things. But again, as a coach, you've got to be looking along the line and seeing, is someone struggling this? And you just have to build their confidence. So you might take them off on your own for 4 or 5 minutes, and you know how much pressure you can put on that block then. And say, come on, let's do 5 minutes together. Yeah.
And it might be a step-by-step thing, right? Where you're trying to encourage success at the beginning of it.
Totally.
And then go on a gradual journey to...
So you might have the lad who's not great. So you might be clever with it and put him with someone who you think is a bit smaller, and it builds up. Yeah. And then, again, goes back to the positive reinforcement when he's doing, well, hey, fantastic. Love that. You might see it in a game. Brilliant. Then as the weeks go on, so say it was something as simple as that. You did 4 minutes of block tackling before, seeing who could win. Then the following week, you might, as he's doing better, you might pair him up with someone else. Yeah. Have a little laugh and go, I've put you up against Tom today. How you get? Do you know what I mean? And but it's dealing with people. Yeah. It's constantly dealing with people and making sure that when it doesn't work, you're there to support them. Yeah. Then are you loosening that rope off a little bit more because you think, okay, he's doing well, and you've got to gauge that. I mean, for me, that's what coaching is. You've got to gauge when he's ready for that rope to be 1 foot slack to maybe 3 foot slack. And
instead of a team focus, that's probably where your individual focus comes in, Robbo, and understanding when to interject at that point.
And I think the time when it goes wrong, Jimmy, is when you get frustrated and there's too much talking. Just keep thinking about, I think if you're coaching at whatever level and you've got this lad who's struggling, if you everyone's just talking about it, going, oh, he struggles, just go home, have a breather, and think about how can I help him. Yeah. And you will come up with, if you've got anything about you, you'll come up with a solution. Yeah. And find time within that, but also put a degree of ownership on him. Yeah. Can you go out with your dad for 10 minutes and do it? And you know what I mean? Yeah. Or whoever it is, or your brother. And it just works like that, really.
Robbo, from a competition perspective, also from a Coerver point of view, obviously 1v1, 2v2, that's... that'll get people. Yeah, it's a bit sink or swim. Yeah. And then you have to be careful about pairings as well. So you want to kind of match probably abilities in a mixed ability group. Yeah. Try your best to match abilities. Yeah. But I think that's also a true way. I assume in the pro level, right, people don't want to lose a 1v1 or 2v2 when it's all highlight.
See, this is when I find it fascinating. So John Terry said to me he used to grab Gianfranco Zola after training and literally be like, come on, embarrass me. Like, he'd want that. Wow. And he said over time, first time he did it, he was like getting twisted left, right and centre. Then all of a sudden he started to work it out. So let's say, for argument's sake, he was doing 10 minutes. Like a week later, he's nicked 1 ball. 2 weeks later, he's nicked 2 balls. Do you know what I mean? So over time, he started to work it out. So his mindset, being elite as he was, is no, I want to set the challenge really, really high. I'm going to go with the best dribbler there is, and I don't care if I get embarrassed. But obviously that's a different mindset. So going back to what you said, it's again gauging it. You might go, okay, he needs to just go with so-and-so, and then you increase that challenge point for him as they go along. But what I'm saying is it's not one thing, Jimmy, but then if you have this along with the ownership program and all the other stuff we're talking about, your ultimate goal is to take little Billy at 9 and hopefully install those John Terry, Frank Lampard, Roy Keane things. Why not have that as your ultimate goal? Yeah. If you don't get there and you end up with mid-ground, it's better than just not doing it at all. Yeah. So that would be
that John Terry story, Robbo, obviously requires such a confidence, right? And from within, an ability to be okay with, especially in front of your peers, etc.
And sorry to interrupt, Jim. Yeah. Again, that there would be something at play there around the culture the managers created there as well. Yeah. Because it is quite a big thing to go out and potentially, someone who's a top player, 1v1, they're looking across and you end up on the floor and he's gone past you. But then there's a culture going on there of development and learning, even within a first team level, where he feels, no, everyone's striving to be their best. So that's a culture within, and that goes back to the thing, a good team, the coaches make the players accountable. A great team, the players make the players accountable.
Brilliant.
And it goes back to that.
Brilliant. Robbo, let's go to a popular topic in terms of the feedback we've had from the audience. So it's around training design, and I'm going to ask quite specific questions if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So these are direct from some of the followers that we've got at the moment. So in small-sided games, what's an appropriate playing time? If you look at a sort of 60-minute session, how long would you say small-sided games, condition games, should be, as part of that 60-minute?
So
depending on age group, this is for under 13s.
So again, you want to break it into blocks, so be clear on what you're working on and break it into the relevant blocks. So whether it be 5-6 minute blocks, but I mean, my simple answer for that is you want it to feel like the game, and you want the intensity to feel like the game. So again, if you use the processes that I've talked about, where the players are driving the intensity, you don't want what my answer to it would be, because I don't think it's good to give fixed times and go do that. Clearly, you want to break it into blocks because you want to have intervals where the players hopefully can talk and you can talk to them. Yeah. So what I'd say is, once the intensity drops, there's no point in doing it. So that's the key for me. So if you're working on something, you want it to feel like the game they're going to play on Saturday or Sunday. Once the players can't reach those levels, then there's no point doing it, because you want the success they're having to be realistic to what they're going to face. If anything, you want to try and get the intensity higher than what they're going to face. So a simpler answer would be to break it into the relevant blocks that you think. Mm-hmm. I mean, 60 minutes of gameplay is a lot anyway. Yeah. I wouldn't. You'd probably have lead-in sessions to that. So whatever you've worked on, you're taking into the game scenarios. But that would be the key thing is to, and don't be scared to change it. So let's say you in your head you've gone, right, I'm doing 5 blocks of 6 minutes, and you've maybe got a couple of progressions within those blocks to advance the session. If all of a sudden you get to a block and you feel the intensity has dropped because the boys are tired, well, don't do the last block. Don't do the last block. Have something up your sleeve that you might do something else, because there's no point, in my view. Sure. Once you've lost the realism to the session, well, just let it. It's not about time. It's about realism. Are they improving? Are they getting better? If all of a sudden the challenge point has completely dropped off and that rope's become really tight and I'm pulling you up, you're just doing it because you're time filling, so have something else that you can do at the end. And it might be something just enjoyable,
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I'm trying to think. So would the advice to a grassroots coach be have a plan B, basically? That doesn't, you achieve what you want to in that amount of time, and you've still got more time to go.
I've seen coaches playing sessions like pitch sizes.
Yeah.
And it's clear the pitch is too big. And they go on and they go in and they go, what do you think? And I go, well, what did you think? They went, the pitch was too big. And I went, why didn't you change? What stopped you changing? I didn't want to stop the flow. So you just spent an hour. You just, not I want to say completely wasted, but you knew it was too big.
Yeah.
You knew the challenge point was too easy, but you were more worried about. So there you go. You talk about accountability and ownership. So I'll give you an example. So you're 10 minutes into your session. You realise the pitch is too big, and you want to make it smaller. What would you do?
I'll stop and change it.
Let the players change it.
Oh.
So you just go, lads, think challenge points. Maybe you bring challenge point a bit easy. Yeah, maybe. Should we bring the pitch in? Brilliant.
Yeah.
Tell them, right, it's only picking up a cone.
Yeah.
Right, boys, how quick can we do it? Let's bring the pitch in 5 yards each side. Give it to them.
It's a better way to do it.
It's a better way to do it. It's quicker.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're part of it. They're part of what process of understanding why you've brought the pitch in, because the challenge points. Yeah.
Great point.
Oh, you might even go, what do you think? Should we be brave? Should we bring it in? Should we really go for it? Yeah, come on. And then you might go, it's going to be really tight now, so you've really got to find space. You've really got to move the ball quick. But they're part of it. Rather than just stopping it, they stand around, you're moving the cones in. So that's why I found it quite hard when you say to me about ownership, it's constant all the time.
I get that now, Robbo. It's just something, it's a perspective that you've got to consider at all points. How you act, what you say.
I'm a coach, that's part of what I do. I set the pitch up, I move the pitch. No, not all the time you don't have to. No, the players predominantly, I get it, professional level, they want to turn up. I love it. I love players turn up and my session's ready and it looks professional. But also within that there can be room for ownership and stuff.
A lot of flexibility.
Of course
in that
there
as well.
can.
Yeah. Robbo, questions again, looking at sort of session structure, training design around unopposed work. So obviously at Coerver, sort of a big part, ball mastery, etc. And the age-old controversy or conversation around, is it game realistic? So a few questions around sort of the U11 age groups, really foundation phase. You know, in your experience, and I'll put you a bit on the spot, but how do you see that and the value of unopposed work in as part of your session mix?
Totally. We've had so many chats with your dad about this and people, and you know, we went through, didn't we, let the game be the teacher, and I don't think people fully understood that. So I can only give my view.
Sure.
And my view is, it's hard to give my view without your dad being in my head. But this is where we come together, you and my dad, talking about that. I believe through high repetition, to learn a skill, let's keep it simple, to learn a skill, for me, you have to have high repetition, high number of hours to learn a skill. I think, and I believe it has to be unopposed. That's my personal view initially, to learn the skill. People's worry and concern is you're just learning a skill and you're not knowing when to use it and whatever. I totally get that. But the way your dad coaches and you coach, I'm sure, was every skill led to something else. That's why I loved it so much. So if you were teaching like a step over or a certain skill, there was always a what's next in it. So if you do that and the opposition player does that, well, what could you then do? So there was always a what if, which I took into my coaching, not just in terms of 1v1 skills, but tactical stuff as well. When I talk about angles and I go, okay, so if you might drop in there and do that, how are you going to react? And they go, well, we'd do that. What does that open up? That opens up that. And if they stop that, what does that? Well, that opens up that. So what I loved about your dad, there was always the next layer. So for me, it was never about just high repetition, mastering a skill. There was always the what if, the what's next. So my personal opinion is I think you need the high repetition to master the skill. And I think that also needs to be practiced outside of training because, again, I think there isn't enough hours in the day, so they have to take ownership of it. But I'd say even when you're doing the unopposed stuff, I do think you need to relate it for them to the game. That's the key. So when they're practicing that skill, it's relatable to the game. And, you know, you might be talking about things, getting your head up. And it's how you're mastering it. So if you're mastering a skill completely with your head down all the time, then when it comes to the game, they may struggle. Does that make sense? So it's adding the layers, but I don't think the sort of stuff that your dad taught me and showed me, I don't think you can get enough repetition by just going, right, this is the skill. Now we're going to do it in a 6v6 game. I think you have to really nail down those skills.
With the step-by-step
and
approach.
The step-by-step. And listen, you're not telling me some of the stuff like Ronaldo that he's pulled off, that hasn't been hours and hours of mastering a skill on his own and then taking it into a game-related situation. So I think, I'm all for it, but I think they need to take some ownership. But again, and I think it's like getting to the stage where, are you doing it at the required pace? Is there people think it's simple because you're mastering a skill, but there's not. There's disguise. There's, I've watched your dad doing it. It's like the angle of your hips. There's there's a lot more to it than just learning a skill. To fake something, to do something else. Your hips can be in a different direction. Your upper body can be in a different direction. If you're faking to shoot, well, if you're really fake, you've really got to fake to shoot. Your arms have got, so there's a lot to it. But I think you need the high repetition.
Brilliant, Robbo. Listen, this hour's, you'd be shocked to know we've gone through an hour.
Okay.
We've got 5 minutes left.
Right.
And I've got two questions for you.
Okay.
Most popular questions that we've been asked repeatedly since podcast one.
Right.
One was around the socks, Robbo.
Yes.
People really responded a lot to the socks. So this was the idea that you'd have, one colour sock for the weaker foot and another for the stronger foot.
Yeah.
And the question, a common question was, how do you evaluate the progress of that?
Okay.
Did you think about it game by game? Is it over the course of a season?
Yeah. So again, shared the success through positive reinforcement. Like so much so that I remember lads running off, celebrate, like pointing to their mum and dads when they'd scored with their weaker, like with their different colour sock, like running off and pointing to it, and the parents laughing. So celebrate it first and foremost. So the answer to that question, we went through so many processes in what does a two-footed player look like, and because it's not just being able to pass the ball with your weaker foot and different degree, it's being able to travel with the ball on your weaker foot. And going back to your dad again and Coerver, can you do hook, inside hook, outside hook, blah, blah. So it's a real thing. So what we come to the conclusion was there's so much to it that we made the target. You didn't basically getting a scholar, getting a pro was the day you wore your socks, because we just thought it was a better challenge rather than go, okay, at 16, he comes and goes, I'm completely two-footed, and we do a process of around, how do we check? Right, you got to do a hook turn, you got to do an inside hook turn, you got to do this, you got to 7 different passes. We just felt no, that basically it was a consistent program, and if the day you get your pro contract, because at Scholars we used to do it as well, under 18s they used to wear it, and so you get your pro contract, that's the day you get to wear two. That was that. We decided that was the best way.
That's class.
Yeah.
So Robert, last question. People love what you said in the last pod about you're most vulnerable after scoring.
Yeah.
And we see it at the pro level, at grassroots level.
It's funny, since I did it, I was watching games and seeing, did the opposition have the next big chance? And out of the 4 games I watched and team scored, 3 of the games the opposition did have the next big chance.
So talk a little bit about how, again, if you could just from a grassroots level, how can we think about that at the grassroots game, and how do we work with our players to understand that scenario?
Okay, so so in training, straight away you can have that thing where if you in your train you score, so you've got the team that scores now have to have the best big chance for that goal to count, because if you said, you could, I mean, listen, I'm only telling you what we do, you might go, no, you have to score the next goal for that, whatever you think, but then I think you go deeper in terms of what that looks like. So after a goal, initially when we did it, sometimes I would stop it because I wasn't happy with what I saw in the response after the goal, and it became like a basketball game. Yeah. So for a little while, I actually said, right, you've got 30 seconds. You've just scored. I want you to get together, and I want to see what having the next big chance actually is going to look like. Right. So I talked about that. Is it mid-block? Yeah. And we're going to be really secure and hit you on the counter? Is it, no, we think we've got you, we're going high press? So there's that. And I also think there's other elements, and we did this, I remember, away to West Ham, where like you might celebrate the next tackle or the next header after you've scored. So after you've scored as well, make sure you win the next header. Make sure you come away with the ball in the next 50-50. And when you do, celebrate it like you've just scored another goal, because it is a mindset shift. You've scored, the opposition think we got to do something about it. You might go a little bit safe. So you make sure that next time that ball goes up, you win a header, you pick up the second ball, there's massive positive reinforcement. Next 50-50, you win it, there's massive positive. Then that team all of a sudden thinking, wow, this lot are relentless. Yeah. And then probably the next big chance will come anyway, or the next goal will come. And we did that away at West Ham, really tough game. And we got the goal. And I looked at coach and thought, right, what are we going to do? And we celebrated the next 50-50 and header like we'd scored again. And you could see it, you could feel it. And then about 5 minutes later, we went 2-0 up and we won the game. Brilliant. So, you can just incorporate those little things into training. Brilliant. And,
Robbo, thank you so much for podcast number 2. Really appreciate your time. Cheers.
Cheers, Jimmy. Thank you.
Thank you.